Hey guys, so welcome back to the podcast and Conversations That Matters. Today's guest is Matthew Toman. Matthew, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Seamus. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I appreciate it.
Looking forward to the conversation. So Matthew and myself got connected probably just a couple of weeks ago, and I've been following some of your stuff and looking at your stuff on YouTube. We got connected through a mutual friend and Kira Daly. So I've just been watching your stuff and I thought it'd be great to have you on the podcast. But with every guest that I have, Matthew, I kind of want to get a wee bit of a better understanding of who they are. So if you can give the listeners a wee bit of an understanding of, I suppose, give them a wee bit of an understanding of who you are right now and what you do. And then we can back a bit further.
So my name is Matthew Toman. I own a digital media agency, Bankhouse Media, and a film production company, Bankhouse Productions. And I also have an online academy that is called Mindset and Marketing Academy that just helps people sort of get out of the 9-to-5 grind, put a side hustle on the bit of their business, or just upskill. And I've been working pretty much with clients directly and also business coaching quite a bit now since I've been sort of at the other side of the world. You know, I'm living out in LA at the moment.
Fantastic. So let's take it right back to the start then. Where did you grow up? What was that like? What was it like as a young Matthew growing up?
I grew up in Lurgan, County Armagh. And it was great. It was brilliant. I have no brothers and sisters. It was just me. But we had a very unique sort of setup. It was my dad has a twin brother and two twins married two sisters. And my mom went back to work and my dad went back to work after having me, obviously. And I got minded with my Auntie Louise and my cousins, which are like my siblings, to be honest with you. So I didn't get the full only child experience. But I grew up in Lurgan and it was great. I was okay. I enjoyed school. Primary school, it was okay. I detested secondary school. I really, really did not like it. I didn't get on. It didn't work out anyway the way that we all thought it was going to. But it was great. I probably got mixed in with the wrong crowds at different times. I started drinking quite young. I done all the sort of stuff that you're not meant to do as a teenager. I think whenever I started sort of failing in school a little bit, I turned to different things and it all went a bit crazy from there, but got back on the right track, and that's the main thing.
Yeah. But it's funny because I've kind of like a similar background with the school as well too. Didn't really get on in school, didn't really like it. Like if you go back to looking at your childhood growing up in Lurgan, what were the things that you got inspired by at that time? What were the things that you were interested in that kind of led you into the entrepreneurial path?
Probably my grandfather, to be honest. My granddad Paddy was like he was like an absolute entrepreneur, you know, from a young age. And then whenever I was younger, I remember going into, he had this yard down in Victoria Street, and I went into it one day. My dad said, come on down to your granddad's yard. And I walked in and I was like amazed. I was looking around me. It was a pet shop, you know, and I was like, oh my God, a pet shop. You know, when you walk in, you smell the pet shop and you start seeing all the fish and you're a child. And he said to me, do you want to work here on Saturdays? And I said, yeah, I'd love to. So I loved working in the pet shop with him on Saturdays. And then one day I went into the pet shop and there was like all the animals and all the fish and all the tanks and everything was gone. And there was just rows of like furniture, you know, and settees. And I said, what's going on? And he said, oh, it wasn't working, you know, and I'm now selling secondhand furniture.
So no messing around, just it's done. We're now selling furniture.
But I mean, he had a vegetable van whenever my dad and I was growing up. He had business like chopping sticks and selling them, you know. So I just sort of learned from him from a very young age, you know, get out and do work. Like I was, whenever I was with him, whenever I was younger, I've seen him take off his jacket and like sell it to somebody. Do you know, a leather jacket that he'd probably just bought like a couple of days previous. So that type of thing, I probably just was learned from him and didn't even realize.
Yeah, 100%. And what age were you around there, Matthew?
I was probably from like 11 upwards, you know, and then by the time I was 13, I had started then getting people to drive their cars into my mom's driveway and washing them. And then like taking my dad's lawnmower and going cutting people, getting all my friends and be like, come on, let's go cut this grass and let's get a tenner. It was like really, it's good money at the time, you know, taking on a lot harder work then. So I've always had that, like I've really, really wanted to get to work, you know.
Brilliant. And what do you think like if you could pinpoint it, what do you think that comes from? Is it because you watch your granddad, you watch what was going on? Where do you think that entrepreneurial?
I can remember my grandfather actually. I can remember seeing this vase, right? It's still in my mom's house. It was like this vase, and I said to my granddad at the time, God, I love that, the colors of it. And he said, here, have it, you know, take it. It can be yours, you know. And at that point, it was probably like, if you work, like that was his, do you know what I mean? I probably had experience. How did you get that? Or, that type of thing. So I probably realized it probably wasn't entrepreneurial. I didn't think it was entrepreneurial. I probably just wanted stuff like for myself. I think my mom and dad always joke and say, like, from I was younger, it wasn't like bringing me up, it was like managing me, because I was very much stuck in my own mindset. And I always have been. I've been really, really stuck in my own sort of determination mindset. And I think that it just came from wanting to have like my own control over my own stuff. If I wanted to get something, I wanted to be able to buy it. And I didn't really like depending on anybody else, and I think that was it. And it's funny because my best friend, Ramo, we were in school and we're both pretty similar. We didn't go to grammar school. We stayed on, done fourth year and fifth year in the school that we were in. And our national insurance numbers came pretty much on the both same week. And we were both 15. And I said, come on, we'll go get jobs. Come on, we'll go up to Rutledge recruitment. And we left school that day early. We were only like in fifth year. We hadn't even turned 16 yet. I went into Rutledge recruitment, and the girl Julie there actually gave her the wrong date of birth. And she was like, when can you start? And I said, let's start now. Like when, and said, there's a shift going out to Moray Park tonight at 5:00. So we both got on the bus and went to Moray Park that night. And it was funny because his mom worked in Moray Park, and we ended up getting put on her line. She seen us out to school that morning and then seen us into on her line that night. She's like, what are you doing here? But he's a very successful electrician and got like string of houses that rented out and things. So we always just had that, like, get up, go to work, and didn't really want the academic route.
Yeah. Do you think it was more as well of just kind of being in control of your own destiny, being in control of like what you actually wanted to create within your life? Because I know for me, even in my journey, if I look back, like school was never a thing that I was really interested in. I was always like looking out the window, dreaming about doing something else, playing football. School just didn't give me anything that I actually really felt inspired by. There was nothing. I was being like stuck in a box, learn this is what you need to do, but I wasn't interested. Do you think for you it was like, I want to control how I want to live, I want to control like my destiny, let's say? What do you think that thread was?
Oh, absolutely. Like control, I'm control freak. Is that a bad word these days? I don't know. But I definitely would rather have more control over where I'm going and what I'm doing. And I think whenever it comes to even running a business now, it's like I like being a leader. And I think everybody who works with me enjoys it as well, because they know they feel they're in safe hands, and they're like, okay, brilliant, let's move forward. Because I've always kind of had that, I've always wanted to have my own money, have control over it myself. I've never asked for anything off anyone, But different times of bootstrapping a business is a bit difficult, and I had a few friends lending me 5 or 10 grand here and there to sort of cash flow me through, and I really appreciate that. But really, on the big scale of it, I've never had to get a loan. I've never had to do anything like that, because I know that if you go out, and I always say to everybody who comes in to me to start working, I'm like, if you're prepared to go out and work, you're never going to go hungry. So take that off all the fears you have around money, release them now. Because if you're prepared to go out and work, it's just about knowing what to go and work on that's going to benefit you the best. And I think that I probably had a bit of that instinctively. But whenever I looked around me in the town, obviously there was no Instagram, Facebook or anything back then. So you look at all the flashy cars, you're like, who's driving them? What did they do? And every single person in Lurgan that was driving a flashy car either worked in the pub industry or the property industry. Right. And my dad said to me from a very young age, if you get given a pub, even for free, don't take it, and he always said that. He said, never get into the hospitality industry, never get into pubs. And I think he had a problem with me maybe being, drinking too much, which turned out to be true anyway, and maybe he's seen that and realized you shouldn't be in a pub. But I looked at the property developers, and that's how I ended up getting in by my first house so young, because I thought, that's a route into being able to have that fancy car and have the lifestyle that I had at that time perceived as success.
It's interesting, because did you feel that was perceived as missing as you were growing up, Matthew?
Not really. We have a very nice house. My mom and dad both worked like 9 to 5s. But the thing is, my dad worked in a place called Let's, which was like a YTP scheme for people coming out of work that didn't do well. And my dad taught them how to weld. But I can remember being like 14, and I said to my dad, why don't you take a unit down at Sido? like this area. And I said, take like 6 of your trainees and start a business selling gates. And he looked at me as if, is there something wrong with you? Why are you even saying that to me? And I always remember sitting in my granny's and thinking, look at that house there. That first phase was 41,000. The second phase is 47. They've made like X amount of money. Why don't we like buy a house? And my dad said, Matthew, you're 14. Like, stop annoying me. And I think it wasn't that I never got any, like, I'm an only child, so I got spoiled, right? Whenever I was younger, if I wanted like a pair of Reebok pumps, I got them. If I wanted a pair of kickers, I got them, right? Which I was blessed. But at 16, like genuinely 16, that stopped. And my mom and dad said, Matthew, go out and work. And I had to go out and work and pay money into the house from that age. Like, they had taught me from that age. And there was no weeks I was missing it, It was like started off £20, £25, £30, £40 as it went up. And then I realized I'm putting all this money into this house. I should buy my own. and then and that's sort of how that happened. So I think it was maybe a bit being spoiled whenever I was younger, and then that then being stopped. And then like, now it's time for you to go make your own money.
Brilliant. So what did you feel was the kind of struggles at the start, Matthew, what was the first business you created? What were the struggles you found trying to get your business up and running? For anybody else that's kind of maybe on that path now where they're starting to create a business, they're looking to create a business. What were the struggles or the challenges for you at the very start?
Well, the problem was I chose the wrong industry and I didn't look at the actual return. I thought property was the way that I was going to be doing. So I bought my first apartment. And then I went on to buy other houses as well and end up losing everything in the recession. But I was also at that time working as a refrigeration engineer. So whenever I left school, I went to train to get a trade. My mom always said, go get a trade, And although I stayed in it too long, it was one of the best things I'd done, because refrigeration and air conditioning, you can make like a lot of money. So I made money in one job and put it into another one. And I always recommend everybody doing that. Don't jump in the deep end and think like you have to go and start a business and you're meant to have all the answers, because you're not. You have to cash flow yourself. And I always was a very bootstrap. I wasn't really like a go do a big raise and sort of build a business that way. So whenever I first done that, I hadn't really done the math in my head and realized it was inflated, just the equity in houses because of what was happening at the time. So I would have had maybe 100,000 equity in a house and took some money out and bought another one. That really wasn't my money. It wasn't a business. That wasn't a business model. It was sustainable. It was out of my control. We were lucky with the way we got on stride. So it wasn't really until I opened Bankhouse, like years after, whenever I really had a look at, I had went insolvent. I had to hand my houses back to the bank. I lost my job and I found myself on unemployment in Dublin. At that point, I think it was ranked like the 3rd most expensive city in Europe. I had went from always having money, always having houses, always having access to everything, traveling Australia, doing whatever I wanted, to having zero and getting like 188 euros at the time a week. So whenever I went back to I
suppose, because that's a big mindset shift, and it's a big challenge for people to overcome. Like, what was that actually like? What was that actually like, living with that, dealing with that? What was going on in your head? What was the emotions like at that time?
So I had just come out of a relationship in like 2010 that was like I'd needed to separate and get away from. I was in Belfast, and I had moved to Dublin to sort of put the space between us. And I had read a book called The Secret. It kept getting recommended to me. And that was the first time that I had then started to not learn something new. It was tapping into what I had instinctively done as a teenager. Like the thoughts that I was having that I can have a house or I can have a car, or I can do this. I had those unlimiting beliefs as a child. But then over the next like course of 10 to 12 years, life just got in the way and just took away all those thoughts and made me feel really insecure, had a lot of shame around like being able to sign on unemployment. Didn't tell anybody, because didn't tell any of my family in the north, and didn't tell like my closest friends that were in Dublin with me, because it was pure shame, and that was it. And I had failed, and I had failed massively. And because so many people had said to me from a young age, oh my God, it's great what you've done, bought a house, oh, it's great you've done this, or you start to believe it, like you start to feel it, and then you're like, how can I go back now and say, oh yeah, like I remember going back and having to tell my mom and dad, look, I have to get rid of the houses. And my mom was like, what? Those people have lived there for 10 years and they've built them up. And I said to her, look, would you rather I killed myself? And she said, what are you going to, and I said, I'm not. But at that time in Dublin, it was on the front page of the papers about people gassing themselves in cars, people committing suicide, because the Celtic Tiger was it was such a big fall in the south and people couldn't do it. I've never had a suicidal thought in my life, thankfully, and I feel sorry for anybody who ever goes through that. It's surely extremely difficult. But I was trying to set it to my mom, saying, people are killing themselves over money. I'm going to meet a solicitor tomorrow and I'm going to sign everything over to the banks and that's it done.
Yeah.
And she said, do it immediately, get it done. So there was a lot of like these decisions that had to be made at that time. And I credit a lot of it to a guy, Steve G. Jones, one of my mentors, you know, who helped me through that process. So, but yeah, it was a big mind shift going on to unemployment. And I spent like a lot of time on my own at that time, because you think about having to get up and work every morning from like 7:15 and you get home at like 5:45, right? And whereas now I was like awake at 7:15, like looking at the ceiling, getting up at like, you know, 11 o'clock and then just being like, what am I meant to do? What am I doing with my life? You know? So there was a lot of, so basically I read The Secret in 2010. So I'd already prepared my mindset right up until I had then finally like been on unemployment. I'd already been into acting a little bit in a few different bits and pieces around that time. So I was distracted by I knew the possibility. I knew what was going to happen in the future at this point, because I started to get the belief back. Yeah. So letting go of everything was really easy because I knew there was a bright future ahead. And then it just was all the stuff, all the uncomfortable stuff, signing on to unemployment, getting rid of my houses, like having to do deals with all these people and pay so much money back. And it was just crazy.
But you still at that time had that kind of inner belief that this is just a blip. I know that I'm still going to go on and do what I want to do and succeed. That was kind of still there and ingrained.
It came back. It definitely came back. Like I didn't have it at one point. At one point I thought, I have no hope here whatsoever. I do not know what I'm going to do. I took a job actually being a host in a restaurant. Somebody said to me, Matthew, come work for me in my restaurant. It was one of the hardest jobs I've ever done in my life. I like running and like remembering everybody's tables and who was in, and you know, it was so difficult. And I can remember coming away from that feeling like really, really hopeless, going like, what am I going to do? You know?
What was the biggest lesson then that you learned at that time?
The biggest lesson was, you know, let it go. It's not serving me. It's not what I wanted to do, and stop trying to make a, you know, circle fit into a square. Just like, I don't want to be a refrigeration engineer. I don't want to have houses. I don't want to have tenants. You know, and then asking myself then, what is it I do want? And that's what I ask myself all the time now. You know, what do I want? And I always have to stay super aligned with that.
Yeah, that's funny, man, because a lot of times, like when we're in those things, we look at it as a crisis, but then with hindsight, we can look back and see it as a blessing. And sometimes those things are like, right, well, we're going after this because it's what society says, or it's because what we deem as successful, or we think what we need or what we actually want. But it's maybe not actually really aligned with what we truly value. It's maybe not actually really aligned with what's most inspiring for us. Does that resonate? Do you think that?
Oh, absolutely. You know, I was living someone else's version of success back whenever I was trying to like have a, you know, property business and doing all this. That was one of the people that that actually good for. I bought a house off him actually, and he's always been an inspiration to me how he runs his business, and even more so now. But I was trying to replicate what he was doing, you know, and we're still like really, really good friends. We're actually related, second cousins, but and so I was living his version of success and what it meant for him, you know. And so I had to really be like, what is it I want? What is it I want to do? And start from scratch, you know. And that was it.
Powerful. Okay. So what was the next steps then after that, Matthew?
Well, you read The Secret and start saying, you know, what do you want to do and all this. And I think that The Secret for me left a lot of holes in it. But, you know, people had often said to me, why don't you get into acting? Have you ever thought about this? Have you ever thought about doing anything like that? And, you know, as a child growing up, you know, you probably wanted to be a professional footballer, you know, or something like that. I always wanted to be like, you know, God, I wonder, could you be in that movie, or could you be a singer, or be something like that? So whenever I was older, I was like, I have nothing to lose now. I've nothing. I literally haven't got anything anymore, and I'm starting from a clean slate. So I joined a film school, the Irish Film Academy in Dublin in 2010. This was on the before it really, really got crashed for me. So I was very grateful to have Rachel Sarah Murphy and all the people in that class and the friends that I built up and made around that time. And I got into acting, and I met a director, Jason Figgis, and he cast me in a movie in a small part. And then he cast me into another movie then, which I had a supporting lead in. And he said, look, we can't finish the movie. We've no budget, and it's me and the producer aren't getting on anymore. So, and I was like, this is my big break. This movie has to be out here. I didn't realize at the time that I wasn't that good of an actor, I still was thinking that I was. And I ended up by accident finished that movie. I ended up, like I said, what has to be done? And it was exactly the same stuff that I'd done in refrigeration and in my houses and in all the organization and dealing with money and dealing with all that stuff. And I'd learned so many things about budgeting and about taxes and about money going through my insolvency that now I was armed with all this new knowledge and information and what to do, how to make money, what you have to put aside, what you have to do, and all these different things. So stepping into film production was like, it was so natural. I can't even tell you, I can't even express how natural it was, because it was creative. I loved being around actors and directors and on set, and all the other stuff that everybody was stressed out over. It didn't even faze me. It didn't even, because working as a refrigeration engineer is stressful. Dealing with banks and dealing with houses and dealing with tenants who don't pay you, all those things are stressful. Whenever I get into film and something that other people would have been stressed out about, I was like, this is a breeze. So I loved it. And I still, I'm out in LA. We're producing a project at the minute. I still am film producing. And that was the progression into me kind of opening my own company. Fortunately, that company couldn't afford to take me on. So I was forced with then having the option to, what do I do here? Do I go try get a job? And to be honest with you, no one would have hired me. I wasn't qualified. I left school with 3 C's and 4 D's, and I've got dyslexia, and no one would have hired me, so I had no option but to start my own company.
And was that the start of Bankhouse Media then?
Well, that was Bankhouse Productions. It was a company called Bankhouse Productions. Whenever I was going through the transitioning off unemployment, now I could have left unemployment earlier. I could have got a job somewhere. I could have done something, but I needed to take that time to see what I wanted to do. So a company called Inner City Enterprise, an organization in the South that helps people get off unemployment and start their business. They reached out to me and they were like, look, you're on the register. Let's have a chat to see what you can do about this. I'd heard about them. They ended up helping me open up my business and start my business. I became quite a big advocate for them because I'm so grateful for them. I'm now on the board. I sit on the board of Inner City Enterprise, and now we help thousands and thousands of people get off unemployment or come out of direct provision or all that stuff and get businesses opened. So that was a full circle moment to get that open. So that was Bankhouse Productions, and that opened on the 1st of August, 2014.
Fantastic. And what was that primarily focused on then, Matthew, at that time?
I went in it. Yeah, whenever we went in at the time, Shane, who worked for Inner City Enterprise, we had to put in an application form to get off unemployment, essentially, to get the business with still a bit of support. And I said, look, I want to do movies. I want to be out in LA. I want to be working with A-list Hollywood actors. I want to be doing all this stuff. He's like, okay, Matthew, let's chill out a bit. Let's make it believable, And I said, okay, will you fill it out then? What do you want me to say? And he said, well, what about the local restaurant videos or the local? And I said, okay, no worries. So I filled it out and done all the paperwork that I had to do, to get sort of past that part. But Bankhouse Media, we still do the local restaurant videos to this day. And we ended up doing a documentary. It's funny, whenever Shane came to Street Leagues, it was Colin Farrell was in it. And he said, how can't believe you actually done it, Matthew. You end up working with an A-list Hollywood actor. And I was like, look, I've worked with loads of people at this point, but I was like, yeah, that was the goal. And that's really what we worked towards. And that's what we done. So predominantly at that time, we done TV commercials, video production, movies, documentaries, just anything that involved a camera. And this is before everybody had this, before even Facebook Live or anything like that. So people were investing in a lot of professional videos at the time. And you didn't have this set up. I do everything now from my phone. But back then, we still do a lot of video. My company today is shooting in Cork, for 3 days. So we're shooting all over Ireland. And I'm out in LA working on a film. But Bankhouse Productions grew doing all of those things. And again, in 2018, I found myself in another unfortunate situation. I just done a movie called Dive, and we done it from turning on cameras to releasing in cinemas nationwide was 66 days. It hasn't actually even been done before, I don't believe. We had 2-week run in cinemas. We end up winning Best Feature at the Indie Film Festival. It's now on Amazon Prime and distributed. But because it was so insanely rushed time, the accountant didn't file our tax incentive, and we didn't get any of the money back that we were meant to get for it. And I found myself back in like 60 grand debt, like literally overnight. We just got the devastating news: you're not going to get the money. And not only the money that I had put into it, but me and the other producer friend was 60 grand in debt, like people looking invoices that day. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm back here. I just got a new house in Sandymount. I just bought a new Jeep, but got the office in Temple Bar. Like everything was moving the right direction. I was back on my feet again. And then I was just like, oh my God. So I thought about getting rid of the house, getting rid of the car, all these things. And I was sitting at my breakfast bar and I just said, I got to stop focusing on trying to save money and start making it. And in that moment, I just ended up writing down all the different lists of stuff that I could deliver, and how I could help other people with the knowledge that I have. Just sat on my breakfast bar on my own, rang my mentor, Anil Shamwani. He ended up said, I'm in London on Friday. Can we meet up? We met up on that Friday and went through everything. And on the way home, someone, just serendipity, life, law of attraction, whatever you want to call it, one of my video clients rang me and said, Matthew, do you do social media? And that was the business we had created with my mentor, was Bankhouse Media. And I said, I do. I just started. And she said, okay, perfect. So I ended up then starting, that Bankhouse Media was born weirdly on the 1st of August, 2018, 4 years directly after Bankhouse Production was formed.
Fantastic, man. It's always good to see that when you're getting challenged. A lot of the times when you get challenged, when you get squeezed, when you get forced into a corner, sometimes that's when something great comes out. And
absolutely.
Not everybody will look at it that way. It does take a different type of mindset. It does take a certain type of person to be able to look at a challenge and see, right, okay, where's the blessing in this? Where's the benefit in this? How does this actually serve me? How can I grow from this? Because most people will go into that situation and go, that's me done. And they'll focus on the problem and they'll give all the energy to the problem. And then all of a sudden they can't get themselves out of that hole where you're able to go, okay, I know the problem is. What's the solution? What do I need to do? How do I take action? How do I move forward? Which is fantastic.
It was one of the most stressful times in business that I've had. And at that point, like a 60 grand, owing 60 grand out, I was like, oh my God, how am I going to get this? Because, there's a lot of promo videos. But the one time actually, this time, whenever I sort of got my head buried in the sand, the first time around, whenever I lost everything and, was trying to build business and everything, I turned to drink a lot. At this time I was sober, and I was sober probably for about 2 years. So I had a much clearer head, and I was surrounded by people like mentors that I could turn to and say, hey, this is what's going on. And they could help me steady the ship, and I could do a lot of it myself. I was actually walking into the office and I saw these two guys in Dublin, like graffitiing. And I was like, what are you up to? And they were like, just graffitiing. And they were doing a commission for somebody. And I said, could you come around to my office? They came around and like literally spray painted Bankhouse Media on the wall, full size. It was in Temple Bar. Our office was at the top of the Rock and Roll Museum, an amazing creative building. I got so much done in there. Really, it's with Paddy Dunning. I rented it off him, and the guys came into the office and Bankhouse Media spray painted on. I was like, guys, we're a digital media agency. And that was that.
Class. You touched on it there, Matthew, and I've seen some of your stuff on YouTube as well too, but you're being sober. You're 8 years sober now. Yeah. 8
years in October. So about more than 7.5, but coming up 8.
Yeah. Fantastic, man. And we spoke already. I was telling you about me being 2 years sober.
I know. Congratulations.
Yeah. And the changes that I've kind of recognized and seen within that as well too. Do you want to touch a wee bit on that, Matthew? What was that free?
I am so open about that. Yeah, I'm so open about like my sobriety. I didn't go to AA, but if I did have to, I would. I had a friend at the time, Shane Lennon, and he had been, I think, 10 or 12 years sober, even though he's young. Shane's younger than me, but he stopped when he was 22. He's from Limerick, and he had a crazy start to life. Turned it around massively and very successful now. But he kind of helped me. At one point, I had actually contacted Anilon just to go through like what the process was for somebody supporting someone on alcohol. So I understood that they were saying like it's all up to them. They have to leave it to them. If they want to drink, they drink, all these things. So whenever I did stop drinking, I was like, it has to be up to me. Do you know what I mean? And I had my first drink when I was 13. I drank all the way through my teens. I loved it. I love drinking alcohol. I miss it, at times. But I know that I can't go back there. I knew by the time I was about 27, 28, I was like, okay, I have a problem with this, and I can't really stop. So I just blanked it out. After my 30th birthday, I was like, okay, I've got a serious problem. I need to resolve this at some point. And then by the time I just had turned 34, I had ended up was actually unwell. I ended up I had diverticulitis, hiatus hernia, 3 of my liver bloods were off, high cholesterol, like really bad bloating and swelling, and the doctors were very concerned about me. At the time, I ended up getting loads of cameras everywhere, down my stomach, up the other way, like liver scans, like so many things checked out, and it turned out that I looked okay from the outside, but on the inside it wasn't the same story. And that was the final catalyst. I was like, okay, no worries. And I said to a doctor that day, my doctor Roz, I'll never forget her, she was amazing. I said to her, look, she said, look, stop drinking this, drinking this, drinking this, drink, and just drink that. And I said, I'm never going to drink again. 5 or 6 weeks later, whenever I end up back in with her, I was like skin and bone, gray, like so tiny. And I said, I haven't drank. And she's like, Matthew, if I really thought you weren't going to drink, I would have put you on medication. To come out, like what you done was really dangerous, actually. Because I lived in Dublin. Do you know what I mean? I worked in Temple Bar. Camden Street is a long walk when you're walking home from work and you're drinking. So I did stop that day, and it was very difficult, because your whole friend group changes, your life changes. Like I done a lot of business at the time in the pub. If I was in the pub and I was talking to somebody, and before you know it, I would have had somebody in the next day, like filming a promo video for them or filming their club videos. So everything changed, and I sort of started to realize, who am I? Who am I? I don't even know who I am, because I'd been so used to that character that was life and soul of the party, never going home, always up and at it, always organizing. So I had to completely and utterly relearn who I was and what I liked and what I wanted to do. And it was a tough process. Sad at times, because I don't see some of the people that I hung out with at that time. As I said, I missed drinking as well, but I wouldn't change it for the world, and I wouldn't go back. I have no concerns about. Actually, one time I had a concern about drinking, and that's the video that you watched, me being 4 years sober. That was the first time that I really put it out publicly, and I'd done that to hold myself accountable, because I was in Greece and nearly actually had a drink. It was like, that can't happen. Yeah.
And it's crazy, because especially in Ireland, and if you're working in Dublin, and alcohol is so ingrained in our culture, and it's done for celebrating, it's done for commiserating, it's done for it's just part of everything. And they try and break that mold can be tough. 2019, I went off it for a year, and then I went back on it. And between 2000 and the last 2 years, 2022, really, when I'm back off it again. Those 2 years in my head, I was every weekend, right? I said, I'm going to stop. But I felt that I couldn't. It was the same thing. It was that pattern. And it was so hard to break. I actually did a plant medicine journey 2 years ago, and I felt that was a catalyst to help me actually shift and change as well too. But it can be a massive challenge, and it's something that is so rife in our culture. And like, as you said, putting that video up can sometimes be fearful, because you're putting it out there. But I share mine over the last 2 years, and the amount of messages that I get from people reaching out who are in the same wavelength, who want to stop but feel that they can't. There's fear there. They feel they're afraid to actually just take that step, because it's going to impact their life, their friends group, in so many ways.
Oh, look, I mean, one of my friends started getting up at 4:30 in the morning, right? Because that was this thing, you need to start getting up at 4:30 in the morning. He was divorced from his wife within about 3 years, because she was like, this isn't what I signed up to. So people have fear around, like, what if I do separate, or what if I do stop drinking? What does that mean for my wife? What does that mean for my social life? What does that mean for my engagement with, all these different things? There's so much around it that it's like such a big thing for so many people. And I'm like you, I've had probably thousands of messages at this point, especially through that YouTube video. I had a guy reach out to me from Texas at one point, and like we chatted and voice memo back and forth and became friends. And then I was actually out in Austin working on a project, filming a movie, and we end up meeting up, So I've met like people through the years, through those videos as well, that are in the same boat, that do see that. Look, I think AA is one of the best things that was ever created, right? I think it saved lives, it saved families, it saved businesses. It is like genuinely one of the best things ever created. But I do think there needs to be something else just about that sort of identifies your relationship with alcohol. There needs to be like a step into it before you maybe even stop it, you know, where people then can say, look, what is my relationship like with alcohol? How does it affect I always had these 5 things. It affects my health, my fitnesses, my finances, my friendships, and, you know, my business relationships, or my family and my business relationships. Those 5 things for me were like shot at the time, you know, they were gone. And I do think if you've got 2 or 3 of them out of whack, you should have a look at it, you know, because alcohol doesn't affect a lot of people. Doesn't hold people back. It doesn't distract them, and they love it, and they've got a healthy relationship, and they get all their work done, they get their business done. But for I think more than they would care to admit, there's another path to it. And I also think it's a gateway into like other addictions, sex, drugs, you know, partying, gambling, you know, unhealthy relationships, just with abuse and things like that. You know, it's almost like a gateway into so many other things. Yeah. And I had a guy contact me actually last week. I think he only rang me because I was the only one up in the time zone. I was awake, and he said, like, this is what's going on. And he, like, you know, I knew straight away, but he did come to terms with it, that it was all alcohol related, for the situation that he'd got himself into. And it never, ever would have happened outside that. Yeah. You know, it never would have happened outside that in a million years.
If I look at any of the shit that I got in growing up and all the stupid stuff that I got caught up on, it was never because I was sober. It was always because I was
drunk. I know. Oh my God. And the problem is with me, whenever I started, I was the flipping instigator. You know, that was the thing. So
what's the biggest like shifts in that you've seen? Because for me, I noticed it massively in my business and my productivity. What was the biggest benefit and shift that you got for yourself, Matthew, getting sober?
Like I slept so much better. This is a very weird one, but it took about a year and a half. But I was standing one day just on my feet, you know, and I actually felt my feet on the ground. I felt my heel and my toe on the ground, and I had never actually felt that as an adult. And I was like, what the hell's going on? And it was for the first time that I felt extremely grounded, planted in one place. Now, there is so many benefits to like business. I wouldn't be living out in LA right now. I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. I wouldn't have done the project I've done, work. I wouldn't even have the business partners or the staff because no one could have put up with me. You know, whenever I drank, I couldn't keep a relationship in any form. So like the fact that I have had the opportunity to like regain trust with people, show them that, look, I know I fucked up here, but like I'm good here, and like I'm back. So I had the opportunity to do that, and then prove to people that not only, you know, is it good now, but it's way, way better, and there's so much more out there, and there's so much more that you can achieve and go after. And now my whole thing is like I think even as a child, always just helped people. I can remember always just like using the polish and cleaning the mirrors for my auntie and things like that. And now I do it on such a bigger scale, like with people with businesses, business mentoring, mindset, alcohol, addiction, many different things. I wouldn't be able to do any of that if I hadn't have like got myself into gear. So the main thing for me is the understanding of the ripple effect that it causes, and how I can actually positively affect. You know, if I have 100 clients in Bankhouse and they have 100 customers each, you know, they have people in there like that's the ripple effect is crazy, you know, and I'm really, really aware of that now. And I feel like I've got a much greater responsibility on me than just me saying, nah, I don't want to have a hangover.
Yeah. And I think it just has a massive impact in terms of how you actually show up, the level of confidence that you have within yourself. I always had this like intuitive thing with them that said, like, if you want to go to the next level, if you want to get to where you need to be, this can't be part of it. It was always like this nagging thing, but it was just afraid to kind of actually let it go. And in the last years, the productivity and how I've stepped up and what I'm doing, and I've had a business for the last 18 years, but how I am in the last 2 years has been completely different since I stopped drinking altogether. Like.
Yeah. Oh no. Like, I mean, that's brilliant. That's great to hear. And what is your biggest thing then? What's the biggest thing that you've sort of had to, the biggest win for you?
The biggest one has been, I think, energy for one, productivity for two, and then I think confidence. Like, even though I had my business and I was always showing up, the way I show up and how I show up and that inner confidence within myself has completely shifted and changed, whereas a lot of the times I think I wore a mask. And I was trying to put on a persona a lot of the times where I feel a lot more authentic within myself, and I have that inner confidence within myself that I think stopping alcohol has gave me, definitely.
God, that's brilliant. Yeah, no, I feel the same. I do feel the same. I see photographs of myself about 20 at 29, 30, my 30th birthday, and I'm like, I feel like I look better now than I did back then. Do you know what I mean? It's like, it's so weird, just like getting a good night's sleep. I love it, you know, but it's not for everybody. I'm not here to preach like going sober, 100%. Do what's right for you. Just make sure you've got a healthy relationship with alcohol. You know, the people who work for me, like I was in London we opened an office in London. I was over for 3 weeks. Everybody there drinks, you know, and we were out for dinners and drinking and partying, and I was doing the zeros, you know, on zero beers. And they all get up the next day, we're in work in the gym, moving along. And I would love to be like that. You know, don't get me wrong. Like I would, if life was like that, I would absolutely love it, you know. But for me, it's just, it isn't like that, you know.
100%. Okay, so you're in LA at the minute there, Matthew. Tell me, what do you see as a difference then between like the mindset in the States in doing work and in business compared to back here?
I think that there's more people that, well, California is like a melting pot of all different cultures, and people do come here with a mindset. I think there's a couple of things about LA. You have to be working, you know, to afford to live here. You have to have an income, because the drop off from like having a house to living on the streets, it's not that much, not that great, to be honest. You know, there's a lot of homeless here, and they all come here because it's quite warm. But mindset wise, like positivity, healthy eating, in the gym, yoga, fitness, there seems to be a lot more people doing that here than at home. I credit a lot of it to just the weather, but also people here, you are aware of the opportunity that you can have. There's a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of opportunity for business, a lot of opportunity for, you know, relationships, for mindset, for people actually moving forward all collectively together. You know, in North, like Ireland, all into UK, Europe, parts of all over. I'm not going to say one single part, because they all have like greatness within them, and they all have a massive part of like negativity. And I don't see as many people here, like just on day-to-day friends and things, that have access to drugs as much. I find that in Ireland and in the UK and, you know, and through Europe, there's just so much drugs, you know, and people are taking them. And I think it's like holding them back. I think they're addicted to it. I think it's like going for a cigarette, you know, whether back in the day I would be going for like taking drugs. And I don't see that as much here. I see it massively in homeless people on crack and stuff, but I don't see it in the day-to-day life of socializing and things. I don't think they're able to, because you have to keep working. You have to keep motivated, because, you know, to afford to live somewhere, you have to be on it. Whereas maybe at home, people can get by on less, and maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's hard to tell.
It's kind of like a lowering of standards. They're able to, as you said, like maybe the standard there is a wee bit higher for themselves, that they have to keep on that level. In order
I can't go out and do a load of gear and drink and then go and stay in my mass because I've no house.
Yeah.
Right. Whereas like at home, there's all like families that people can move into, and then they can sort of like, it can get away with them just sort of flying under the radar and spending all their money in areas where they shouldn't be. Whereas here, you know, to have a car, to have a house, to go to the gym, to have food, you have to be on it, you know, and that's what I find. So a lot more people that I surround myself are on it, you know, so they're in the same mindset. Because of that, you know, I was out yesterday for one of my friends for dinner, and she said, Matthew, it's this thing I do every Wednesday night. I sign up to an app, and you get on that Wednesday morning, you get told what restaurant to go to, and you get sat at a table and you meet all these different people. It's not dating, it's like business. So I signed up, and I'm going to go on Wednesday night, you know, just to see what it's like. You're meeting like-minded people. Like-minded people meet like-minded people. Do you know what I mean? And here, everybody has to be out working and hustling to survive, essentially, or to live a good life. So I like being around that sort of mentality, that sort of energy, that, hey, I must introduce you to this person because of that. If I'm around like-minded people that haven't got the same, like, they don't think it's possible, then that's going to, everybody around is going to not think it's possible, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, 100%. Environment's massive. Yeah. James Clear, I think, has a quote that says, environment is an invisible hand that shapes human behavior.
Okay. And it's so true. I believe that.
Yeah, 100%. And if you're in the right environment, then again, you're going to start to conform to their thoughts, their habits, their behaviors, and you're going to start to set goals that are in line with their standards. And the same is, again, if you're in a negative environment, it's going to be something similar. You're going to just
I actually would say that is it. That's the difference. It's the environment, and how do people then get out of how to pull themselves out of their surroundings and battle through to be like one like myself. I've made major sacrifices by giving up alcohol, by cutting ties with like people in my life that I loved, loved, and never thought that we wouldn't be in each other's lives. And the fact that we're not now, it's crazy to even think that. But at the end of the day, you have, I always say there's mourning and growth, and as I sort of grew, and as I started to grow as a person and business and had more responsibility and be moving in a different direction, I had to mourn a lot of situations, people, like circumstances, and I had no option, because if you were hanging on to those situations, then you're never going to be able to achieve what you want to do yourself,
Yeah. And you can't, and that's so true, because you can't have growth without some form of death. There's no cannibalism without cannibalism. You have to have both. And sometimes that's nearly the death of the old self that has to go away, and it has to actually fade in order for you to grow. And I think just what you touched on there, Matthew, is really important, because to give up those things, to give up alcohol, to give up those, you have to have a vision for yourself. You have to have something that's bigger, pulling you towards who you want to be, rather than going back into those old patterns and habits that are technically not going to serve that version. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely. Look, I mean, if you don't know where you're going, like everything with me is like goal setting. I done a movie a couple of years. So whenever I had read The Secret, I was like, I wish I had wrote this. This is like and I think everybody thought that, that get into it. They were like, this is like how I felt whenever I was younger. And with my mentor, Steve G. Jones, I was out and he was helping me through it. And it was one of the guys convinced me to go back, sort out the stuff with your banks. If you want to be a film producer, go be a film producer. And I done everything that he said. I really did, because he was very successful. I looked up to him and I was like, okay, I will. I ended up going back and doing a movie, The Evolution of Success. And it was a movie with Jack Canfield, Joe Vitale, and Bob Doyle, who were in The Secret. Three of the guys who were in The Secret, along with a host of other people that were like in the mindset area. And, Jack Canfield said a comment in that. I filmed with him. He wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, and he's the highest selling nonfiction author in the world. The only person above him is J.K. Rowling, and she's actually fiction. So he's in the curriculum in America, and he's one of the most successful people I know. I absolutely love him. And he said, look, if you don't set goals, Matthew, you're getting used by people who do have goals. And that just landed with me that day and never left me. Yes, I always had goals, but then there was an extra more importance of it. I'm like, okay. And as I said to you, whenever I was younger, I was building somebody else's life of success, living someone else's life, so I went through, we created The Evolution of Success, and it's like a 12-step process. It's actually 13, but we didn't want to put 13 in there. And step number 0 is redefining success. And it goes through a whole series of things in that movie. And now we've just written the book for it. And it's all just about having that clear roadmap for yourself and using all these tools that are available to everybody in business and mindset and journaling and all sorts of things, Yeah. I think, have you got a lag there? Have I got a lag?
Yeah, Kenneth broke up a wee bit. We're back, but just a few words missing there, but we've got the crux of it.
Yeah, well, basically, so, having goals and knowing exactly where you're going, it's the only way to sort of get out of where you're at, and what I always say to people whenever they're at their lowest point, dream as big as you possibly can. I did at one point, it didn't look like I would have the businesses or the lifestyle that I have at all now. I've traveled like full time since 2019. I've lived remotely, but even before COVID was a thing. I had put the offices remote. We still had the office in Dublin for a year, but majority of our work was remote. And I've traveled all over the place. I'm just back from Japan. Like I've traveled nonstop now. I'm actually kind of getting sick of that. Probably next year I'll settle maybe for 2 years or so, or see how it goes. But whenever I worked as a refrigeration engineer, the only thing that I had whenever I was younger, I wanted to travel and I wanted to have financial freedom. They were the two goals that I wanted. And whenever I had houses in Lurgan and County Armagh, like had a refrigeration engineer, I'm like, how am I going to do this? How is this? This isn't possible. To fast forward, a few years, and it is possible. And it is now what I currently have. So I think let your just dream as wild as you possibly can. And then, it's not to say it all just works out and lands on your plate, because you got to put in a lot of work. You got to have strategy. You got to understand. I have the Mindset and Marketing Academy and the Mindset and Marketing podcast. And I think if you get your mindset in place and you understand and learn marketing on how to sell, how to build a product, how to sell somebody else's product, whatever it may be, if you learn those two skills, you can have anything you want. And marketing used to be seen as like a sleazy word, where it's like people think they're getting phone calls or stuff through their letterbox. If you're on a dating site, you're a marketer. If you've got a CV that you're putting yourself in for a job, you're a marketer. Whatever, you're doing it every day. 100%. You're better off like learning the skills and understanding them a bit more, so you have more control over it. So then you can then say, okay, well, if I do this, then I get that.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so tell us a wee bit more then about mindset marketing and what you actually do. If people are interested in reaching out to you, Matthew, and looking for your help.
Yeah, I have like just Matthew Toman page on Instagram, and then there's Mindset and Marketing account as well. I run like mentorship programs one-on-one, but the difference sort of that I have seen that I think is needed is it's brilliant having your mindset in place and understanding where you want to go. But with Bankhouse Media, which we've got partnered onto it, we help so many people build the actual business themselves and actually bring it to market to make money. Because for me, whenever I was learning all the mindset stuff, I was like, okay, I've got all this information, but what do I do now? And then I had to go and learn it all myself, and it took way, way longer. Whereas now, if you're working with me as one of my mentees or somebody who's working alongside me or a colleague or whatever you want to call it, it's all tool based. It's all like, here's the assets, here's the ebook, here's the training course to go and sell, here's like your business built, here's your booking system built. I just think that really what you should be doing now whenever you're working with people is, yes, getting their mindset into place, but not leaving them hanging. I just done another movie that's coming out at the minute. It's called The Overnight Entrepreneur. Everybody knows Alex Hormozy at the minute. He's one of the best marketers out there. I filmed with him in Las Vegas. He's in it, along with a whole host of other people as well. And it's again, it's about turning like the skill set and the knowledge that you already have into a business and selling it and keeping it very simple. It's not rocket science, Yeah.
I think that's a stumbling block, as you touched on. It's and that definitely comes down to the mindset component, which is shifting your mindset and having that belief to actually just go out and sell. Because you could have all the other tools, but then if you don't have that belief within yourself, or you don't have the vision pulling you forward, then you're not really going to implement it anyway. And
that's it. And it is about like also having just a suite of products that you can sell somebody. Do you know what I mean? Like create a product. Like we have things that to enter into our business that are free. The Evolution of Success and the Overnight Entrepreneur are free, $47 products. Then you've got like websites and things like that, right up to we have like turn your book into a movie or turn your online training into a movie, and starts at 250,000. So it ranges from you. And at one point I was on unemployment and didn't have enough money for rent. Like it's not about where you're at right now. It's about where you can potentially go to.
100%.
And it's, I think that's where a lot of, and no matter where you're at, I still feel like I want to grow. We're going to have conversations, I'm sure, outside this, where I'm like, I'm constantly looking to say, okay, what else can be done,
100%. And I think it's, as you said, it's using those challenges, using those things that you've been through, not looking at them as failure, it's only feedback, using them all as ways to actually get you to where you want to be. As my mentor says, everything's on the way, it's not on the way. And I think that perspective is just to look at all of those things and go, right, I learned that. And that served me to be where I am right now. And it's going to serve me to where I'm going in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah, 100%. I agree with you fully there.
Yeah. So Matthew, if people are looking to reach out to you, where is the easiest way they find you?
On Instagram, Matthew Toman, and that's it. I've got there's actually two. There's a mindset and marketing one, and then there's just my personal one. But my personal one, reach me on there. I'm sure there's so many different, if into Google as well. We've got a podcast, the Mindset and Marketing Academy podcast, comes out every Friday. It's just me with my co-host Sharon Kirkpatrick, who runs Bankhouse Media. And we just talk about different things around business, about email marketing, loads of different tips and tricks around that. So we've got that podcast as well. And yeah, if you hunt probably online, my phone number is probably somewhere. People can reach me any way they want,
Yeah. Matthew, fantastic, man. I actually really enjoyed this conversation and taking a wee bit of a deep dive into your journey. And there's a lot of nuggets in there for any entrepreneur that's listening about the mindset ultimately that's kind of needed to get to where you want to be. It's looking at all those different things, challenges that you go through, and knowing as well too that you're going to go through those challenges, not to have the perspective that it's just going to be all roses. If you want to create a business, you have to be prepared for the pleasures and the pains on the journey.
Yeah, and another quote that this one said before I go, it's like things don't happen to you, they happen for you.
Yeah.
And that is something that you just got to remember every time you're going through a bit of a dark time, troubled financially, money, whatever it is. It's not happening to you, it's happening for you.
Yeah, fantastic. Matthew, thanks very much, man. Speak soon.
Okay, thanks.